Hey everybody, this is Bill. I'm the salty old Marine. Today I'd like to talk about VA disability and migraines and what you need to know. By the end of this video, you'll understand what migraines are, how they relate to VA disability, and how you might go about claiming VA disability for migraines. So if you don't mind, take a moment, please press the subscribe button. Don't forget to like my video, leave a comment. We love getting the comments, try to react to each and every one that we get, and let's dive right into it. So, what are migraines? Well, migraines are headaches. Most people know that. What most people do not know, or those who do not suffer from migraines do not know, is that migraines can be utterly and totally debilitating. They're not just bad headaches. They're far, far worse. So, for example, I do have migraines. I started getting migraines back in the 1980s. And honestly, before I had my first migraine, I really didn't know, and I thought they were just bad headaches, severe headaches perhaps, but headaches nonetheless. Then I got my first migraine. I actually thought I had a tumor or something. I had to have myself taken to the hospital in an ambulance because I couldn't drive. So what happened was I was working in Colorado as a police dispatcher after I got out of the military. And I was dispatching. I was using a computer screen to send cars out to various calls. And I started not being able to read my computer screen. It looked like there was some sort of glare on it. I'm closing one eye, I'm closing the other eye, I'm trying it with my glasses on and off, and I cannot see or focus on the screen. Then I noticed that I couldn't see much of anything because I was getting these wavy lines in my eyes, a little worse in one eye than the other, but I could even see the wavy lines when I closed my eyes. I found out later that's called a migraine aura. And basically it was like a 20-minute warning. So when I would get these, and I had many after that, of course, it still have them to this day. When I get the wavy lines, it basically gives me 20 minutes to settle my affairs because I'm not going to be able to do any work after that. It's pre-headache. The aura hits and it gets worse and I can't see anything and I start to get nauseous. And then after about 20 minutes, bang, the headache hits. And it is a really debilitating headache. It is awful. I mean awful. And those of you who have migraines, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't have to explain this. For those who don't have migraines, well, that's a little taste of what they're like. What I had to do when I was on duty as a police dispatcher, if I felt a migraine coming on, I had to take a sick day immediately, drive home back to my apartment. I had to go into my bedroom, turn off all the lights, pull the curtains, and for the next 24 hours, I could not eat, drink, sleep. I couldn't watch television. I couldn't read. I couldn't listen to music. I couldn't do anything. I laid on my back and stared at the ceiling, and with every beat of my heart, my skull felt like it was being beat on by a hammer. It was awful. And yeah, for 24 hours I would go through this, and I would come out of it on the other end just exhausted and sick and nauseous and weak, and then wait for the next one. And I'd feel great. I'd feel fine after I recovered until the next one came along. So I ended up actually losing that job. I was put on probation for abuse of sick time, and then I quit to avoid being fired. So that was the end of my civilian law enforcement career. I had to go back to school and choose a different career where I didn't have to worry about being fired for having migraines. So anyway, that's my little story about migraines. But let's talk about migraines and disability. So as it turns out, the VA recognizes migraines as legitimate disability if they are tied to your active duty service. And they can be tied in either directly or on a secondary basis. Basically, that means that either you are going to claim that your migraine started while you were in the service. Mine did not. If yours did, then you would need to have some sort of a record in your service treatment records of having been diagnosed with migraines while you're in the service. Alternatively, you might try getting buddy letters and writing a strong personal statement and any other information you could provide that would tend to show that your migraine started while you were in the service. However, mine did not. Mine started after I got out. I had been out for a couple of years. And as a result, I filed my VA disability claim for secondary to PTSD. So I have PTSD. I'm service-connected for PTSD, and now I'm service-connected for migraines. So how did I do that? Well, basically, I had to first go and get a diagnosis for migraines. So I went to a neurologist and I got a diagnosis of migraines. I also got medication. I take an injection in my thigh once a month. It's called Ajovy, and I'm fortunate that my insurance covers it. It's really expensive, but it does seem to help me tremendously. It cuts down the number of migraine attacks I have from roughly once a week to maybe twice a month. But I do still have them. The pain when I do get them is much worse, much less, I should say, much improved because of the Ajovy. So it's very effective. And there are other treatments out there as well, other medications. But you do need to have that current diagnosis one way or the other. Also, I should mention that migraines are a subjective diagnosis. Subjective. We've talked about the difference between subjective and objective claims recently on this channel, and I'll provide a link to that video if you're interested. But basically what it is this. There is no medical test. There is no scientific proof one way or another that a person does or doesn't have migraines. They are purely subjective. You describe what you're feeling, and you get a diagnosis of migraines if indeed that matches up with what you're describing. In addition, you may receive some tests, like if you go and visit a neurologist. Those tests are not intended to prove that you do or don't have migraines. They're basically intended to rule out other potential conditions. So, for example, maybe your migraines are actually being caused by something organic, right? Like a tumor, like cancer. Let's hope not, right? But there are lots of different causes of headaches that are similar to migraines, and they want to rule all of those out. So that's what those tests are for. But the tests themselves don't prove that you do or do not have migraines. Basically, if you say you have migraines and you describe the symptoms, you are diagnosed with migraines. So that's a subjective type of diagnosis. You still need the diagnosis, though. You've got to go see the doctor. Okay, so once you have that diagnosis for migraines, the next thing you need to do is try to service-connect it. So either direct, as I mentioned before, like it happened in service, or you would try and service-connect it through secondary, like, for example, with PTSD. And that's how I did it. So basically what I did was I went out and got an independent medical opinion from a psychologist who specializes in this type of thing, who provided the medical research and the rationale behind the thought that PTSD can indeed cause or severely aggravate migraines. And he provided what's called a nexus letter, commonly, or an independent medical opinion, an IMO, that said exactly that. And then said I was at least as likely as not to have received my migraines via PTSD. So I submitted that as a claim, and in fact, my claim was approved. I am rated at 50% for migraines, secondary to PTSD. Now, let's talk a little bit about how the VA rates migraines. Assuming you're service-connected, then the next thing that they want to do is they want to choose a rate, right? So migraines can be rated at anything from, let me pop this up here, in the 38 CFR, where is it at? Here we go. No, that's not it. Here we go. 38 CFR, the diagnostic code for migraines is 8100, and the disability rate can be anything from 0% to 50%, 50% being the highest that you can get for migraines, and that is how I am rated. We're going to pop this up on the screen. We're going to walk through it, but very briefly, 0% is for frequency of attacks less than 1 in every 2 months. So if your attacks happen less frequently than that, you might get service-connected, but you get a 0% disability award. 10% for characteristic prostrating attacks averaging 1 in 2 months over the last several months. Now, what is a prostrating attack? Prostrating means basically that you have to go and lie down. You can't do anything. You cannot do any work. And if you have migraines, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So a prostrating attack is the kind of attack you get when you have migraines because you can't do anything. You're unable to do anything, including work or communicate or eat or drink or do anything. 30% is for characteristic prostrating attacks occurring on an average of once a month over the last several months. And finally, 50% is very frequent, completely prostrating and prolonged attacks productive of severe economic inadaptability. So let's just quickly run through this and talk about what does it really mean. Basically, for the highest rating of 50%, not only does it have to be a very frequent migraine, it also has to be an extremely debilitating migraine, and it has to be what they call productive of severe economic inadaptability, meaning it's very hard for you to hold down a job, and if you have one, you're at risk of losing it. It means you go home sick a lot, and you miss a lot of work, and it costs you money. That's economic inadaptability. So to get that 50%, that's what you have to prove. That's what you have to show, which probably means you're going to need a buddy letter from coworkers and supervisors. You're going to need a record of sick time showing the time you've lost from work and all of that sort of thing to get a 50% rating. 30% rating doesn't require you to do all of that, but it does require you to show that you have those characteristic migraine prostrating attacks occurring an average of once a month for the last several months, and so on. So basically, until you get to the 50% mark, we're talking about frequency. At the 50% mark, we're talking about how it affects your ability to hold down a job. So that is migraines in a nutshell. Again, it's a subjective type of condition. So you describe it to your neurologist and you get a diagnosis of migraines, assuming it's not being caused by something else. There are medications available, lots of different medications, and even some devices that help with migraines. And so your neurologist may explore those with you. By the way, if your medication helps, that does not change your VA disability rating. See, if you waited for the end of the video, you catch this. Otherwise, you're going to be asking me in the comments. So what the VA says is basically that unless the diagnostic code and the rating in the 38 CFR, which I'm reading from right now, unless it states that medication improvement causes a lower rating, unless it says that, which it doesn't, then the effects of medication cannot be taken into account when considering your rating. So they have to consider your rating based on how it is when you're not taking medication, meaning that if you were to stop, you would have those symptoms return again. So don't worry about taking your medication and having it lowering your rating. It should not do that, at least in the case of migraines. I hope you found this helpful. I'm Bill. I am the Salty Old Marine. Please, as I mentioned earlier, like, share, and subscribe. We'd love to get those subscribers. And leave a comment. The comments are just fantastic. I really enjoy them. I try to respond to each and every one of them in one form or another. And as always, have a great day.